Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So we're breaking down the absolutely loaded 14 game MLB DFS slate for today on Draftkings. And the offense is loaded today. There's so many good options at pitching. Like, it's pretty much ace day. We got Bieber, Bauer, Glasnow, Maeda, Gallen, Eovaldi's even the best pitcher for the Red Sox. I guess you could call him the ace. And I didn't even mention some of these guys. Like, we have Lucas Giolito, Zach Greinke, Max Fried, Kyle Hendricks. So it's pretty loaded at pitching today, and the bats, those are guys are also loaded as well. So many ways you can go tonight, but we'll try to sift through and just see some of the guys that stand out to me the most. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button. Really, it's going to help me out. I really do appreciate it. I would say I'd be here all season long, but the season is just about over. But I was here all season long, and I do cover other sports as well, including NASCAR and NFL, which still are going to be going on for quite some time. So if you guys are going to keep coming back to the channel each and every single day or each and every single week, you might as well hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new videos. And if you don't follow me on social media, I'm at ChrisPennell16 on Twitter, CPen16 on IG, and if you miss more content over on Patreon, always much appreciated. We got around 300 members. You can hop into the Discord chat and you get access to all of my spreadsheets as well. So links down below for that, but let's just dive into today's slate. So up top, it's going to be hard to pick through these aces because there's just so many good options, and there's guys that aren't even on the sheet that are also viable. But we'll start with the best pitcher in baseball with Shane Bieber at 10,200, pretty much a lock to win the AL Cy Young. And honestly, he's in the running for the AL MVP award too. He's just been that good this season. The numbers have been fantastic. His worst start of the season was 19.9 points versus the White Sox. Besides that, he routinely hits around 30 DraftKings points, and we've even seen a 46-point game from him and a 41-point outing. The guy's just been lights out, and I don't see why that's going to change here in his last start of the regular season. White Sox only have a 3.14 applied team total, which for a team like the White Sox, that is very, very low. Very low. So they're definitely giving a lot of respect to Shane Bieber here. And also looking at the White Sox numbers, obviously they're going to have power, but they do strike out quite a bit versus righties with a 25.7% K rate, only a 7% walk rate. Obviously they got some power and they're one of the better offenses in baseball, but Shane Bieber is the best pitcher in baseball and he can overpower any lineup. He's got a 41% K rate this season, less than a home run per 9 inning, and a 2.07 xFIP. So Shane Bieber, matchup's not tremendous, but it's Shane Bieber. I mean, he can overpower any single lineup he's given, so he's going to be our ace of the slate. Then former Indians pitcher Trevor Bauer at 9,800. He's also an excellent option here, and he's been one of the best pitchers in the NL. As he too has had many games over 30 DraftKings points this season. He had 36 points in 3 straight outings to start the year. So there's 3 starts with at least 30 points. Then in the next start, he scored 40 points, so that's 4 games over 30 DraftKings points. Then versus the Cubs on September 9th, he had 38 points, so that's 5 points over. That's 5 games with over 30 points. Then in the next start versus Pittsburgh, 32 points. So that gives you 6 games so far this season with over 30 DraftKings points, and his worst game was 12 fantasy points. The guy has been absolutely fantastic. He's been over 100 pitches in every single start, besides the game where he got limited to 7 innings because the game was only 7 innings long because it was a doubleheader. So yeah, he's got a very long leash just like Shane Bieber, and he's also been fantastic this season like I mentioned, and this is a pretty good strikeout matchup versus the Brewers. They're a team that's going to strike out quite a bit versus righties, owning a near 28% strikeout rate to them this season. Only a 68 WRC plus, a batting average below 200, and overall pretty weak numbers. Looking at his numbers this season, he's got a really good 1-point ERA. Now his xFIP's about a run and a half higher at 3.31, but even then that's still fine. A 35% K rate, 6% walk rate, and Trevor Bauer. I mean, if you can fit Shane Bieber and Trevor Bauer in the same lineup tomorrow, I would say go for it. There is plenty of value on the slate to get it done, but I don't think it's something you absolutely have to do. But I mean, both of these guys can honestly score 40 DraftKings points at any given notice. So if you can get like 80 points from your pitchers, not saying that's the most likely scenario, I think they both at least score 25 points, which if you can get around 50 points from your pitchers, I think that's totally a good way to go. And I think they're both underpriced too. Shane Bieber should probably be closer to 11K, and Trevor Bauer should also be around close to 11K as well. And then dropping down to it, I would say the tier 2 pitchers. I think the tier 1 pitchers are going to be Shane Bieber, Trevor Bauer on this slate. And then I think the tier 2 guys are going to be Tyler Glasnow and then Kenta Maeda. Although I feel like Glasnow should be in his own tier considering he's got like a 38% K rate compared to Maeda's 32, which is still good. But I think you can kind of group them together in tier 2. Then you have Zach Gallen in tier 3. Then Eovaldi in my tier 4 on this slate. But Tyler Glasnow's fine just because of the strikeouts. He's kind of been on fire recently. If I can pull up his game log really quick going on DraftKings. So his past 5 starts, he's been at 38, 33, 19, 21, and 29. He's been pitching very, very well. He's also seen his pitch count around 100 pitches in each of his last 3 starts. And like I said, he's got a nice 38% K rate in the season. Is struggling a bit with the walks at a double-digit walk rate, which I don't love. But his xFIP's about 2 runs lower than his ERA. And overall, he's having a very strong season. So I think Tyler Glasnow in a very pitcher-friendly park in New York is certainly a fine option. Kenta Maeda, 9,200. He's having a very, very solid season so far. Definitely having a great year. Only 3 runs here for the Detroit Tigers. And I always like using righties versus Detroit because they do strike out at a league-high clip around 28.6%. I said about. I was going to say 28%, but then I just said the actual number. But they do struggle with the righties in the strikeout department. And Maeda, he's got a 32% K rate in the season, only a 4% walk rate, only allowing a 21% hard contact rate, which is the lowest I think I've seen in quite some time, at least from the pitchers that I've made my main sheet. And then overall, just very solid numbers. So I think Maeda is a fine option, and it's going to be really hard to pick between these 4 guys because you can't roster all 4. Then Zach Gallen, 8,600, gets you a little bit of price savings. So I could see if you want to go with Bieber, then a guy like Zach Gallen is your SP2 just to save some money. But there's a lot of ways you can go. But this is a good spot versus the Rangers. They struggle in all aspects of the season on offense. Like, overall, they just suck. Like, a 61 WRC plus to righties, a 202 batting average, only a 124 ISO. Not striking out a ton, but Zach Gallen's having a pretty strong season so far, a 27% K rate, a 3.86 xFIP. The walks are a little bit up, but he's a fine pitcher. And 8,600, I think he is totally viable. Then Nathan Eovaldi, 7,000. I'm not sure how I feel about this because I don't really like picking on the Orioles. But in his 2 starts this season versus them, he's done very, very well. 26 points versus them on August 20th, where he struck out 6. And then in his first start of the season, he had 19.9 points, where he struck out 4. But I don't mind Eovaldi. Like, there's some guys on Baltimore that could give him some issues, like DJ Stewart, some of the other lefties as well. If Chance Sisco happens to make the lineup, and some other guys. But at 7,000, if you need the money for him, if you need the savings with him, I think he's fine as an SP2. He does not carry the same kind of upside guys like Maeda, Glasnow, Bauer, and Shane Bieber do, or even Zach Gallen. But at 7,000, I don't think he's going to end up killing you. So I think we'll move on to the bats at this point. I'll try to fly through this a little bit because there's quite a few bats that I like on this slate because there's just so many good offenses. But we'll start with the Phillies. Like, I like the Phillies a lot. I'm not sure I really love the Diamondbacks, but I do have some of their cheaper options listed here. The Yankees, you got the Chicago Cubs, who are going up against Trevor Williams, so we always like lefties versus him. I already mentioned the Yankees. The Astros are going up against Nick Margevicius, and then I think there's some other bats as well, like Washington. They're okay going against Zach Eflin, preferably the lefties. But yeah, it's a loaded slate. You can go so many ways here. There's not a lot of totals out yet, too, so I'm not sure exactly what some of these teams are going to have total-wise. But we can do some guesswork on that. But we'll start with JT Realmuto here, the most expensive catcher. He comes in at 5,300. But Eric Fetty, just not a very good pitcher. They do have a team total above 5 today, which is going to make him one of the better offenses to target on this slate. Realmuto is great versus lefties. He's great versus righties. Better versus lefties, but he's still fine here. Eric Fetty is a very low strikeout pitcher, 7% to lefties this season and only 8% to righties. So I think you can pretty much load up this entire offense for the most part. Gary Sanchez, 4,500. Robbie Ray, he's a guy that's got upside, but he's also a guy that's going to give up quite a bit of runs and a lot of hits, and he has control issues. And the Yankees can certainly take advantage of this, and we're also in a very hitter-friendly park as well. So you can certainly load up on the Yankees once again. 4,500, he always has some decent power versus left-handed pitching. Then Carson Kelly, 2,600. Imagine he's going to be in the lineup here versus a lefty. And not a lot of info on Wes Benjamin, but I think the Diamondbacks are going to be viable here because they're cheap once again. And it's a hitter-friendly park, and I'm not really too scared of Wes Benjamin here. So Kelly is fine. He's got some decent pop versus lefties. Dropping out of first base, we have Luke Voit, 5,400. He's been absolutely crushing left-handed pitching this season. No team total out for the Yankees, but I have to imagine it's probably going to be one of the highest on the entire slate. But looking at this year, his numbers versus lefties, and near 500 ISO, over a 400 WOBA, 719 slugging, 168 WRC+, and just overall very elite numbers, so he's fine for Yankee stacks. Anthony Rizzo, 3,800. He's getting pretty darn cheap here, and I always like lefties versus Trevor Williams. He's struggling versus lefties and righties this season, but over the course of his past couple of seasons, we've won lefties versus him, and Anthony Rizzo always has some decent splits versus righties, hitting for a pretty low at batting average this season, but over a 400 on base percentage and over a 250 ISO, so I think he is totally fine there. And Trevor Williams is giving up over a 300 WOBA, 2 left-handed bats this season. And Brandon Belt, probably one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. The Giants have a team total above 5 today in San Francisco. I thought for a second, I was like, are these guys in Coors Field? But they're not. But Ryan Castellani got absolutely bombed by the Dodgers in his last start, if I'm remembering correctly, which pretty much everyone gets bombed by the Dodgers. I think it's when the Dodgers scored 16 runs, I believe, in Coors. But Yeah, Giants. I don't like them. I think you can stack the Giants. I really only have one guy listed, but they are stackable. Lefties like Mike Yastrzemski, Alex Dickerson. Although I think did he get hurt last night? I think he did. I think so, but I still like lefties versus him. And Brandon Belt, he's been crushing righties this year, and he's still too cheap versus him. Over a 300 ISO, 192 WRC plus, a lot of high fly ball rate, 356 batting average, and just overall very strong numbers here. So Brandon Belt, love that price tag, and he's an excellent option as a one-off or in part of Giant stacks. Then Christian Walker at 3,300, he's got over a 200 ISO, two left-handed pitching this season. And again, the Diamondbacks are just a bit too cheap here, and they are certainly stackable. Then going down to second base, we have DJ LeMahieu at 5,500. Again, do not have a total out yet for the Yankees, but I have to imagine it's going to be one of the highest on the slate, if not the highest. And he's elite contact hitter versus lefties. Looking at his numbers, he's only got a 4% strikeout rate to lefties this year. Only a 136 ISO, but over a 300 batting average and over a 400 on base percentage. So I think LeMahieu is fine if you're stacking Yankees, or if you get the money for him for a one-off. Although I'm not sure if I'm going to, because I feel like you should want to spend up on pitching today, because when there's that many aces on a slate, it always might be a good idea just to double spend up if you got value in the bats, which we do today. Then Jose Altuve, 3,900, going up against Nick Margevicius here. I mean, Altuve's been absolutely trashed this season, but I do like the Astros stack here, and Margevicius is a guy that will struggle with righties a little bit, but Altuve's numbers, I mean, yeah, they've been awful this year, but it's still a stack I have interest in with a near 5 implied team total. Ketel Marte, 2,900, he is absolutely free, so you can pretty much just lock him in for the most part. I don't see a scenario where you're not going to play him in cash games. I'd have to imagine the Diamondbacks total is going to be around 5 today, and with how cheap these guys are, it certainly is going to make them viable. I mean, this season versus lefties, a 426 batting average, only an 8% K rate, 450 WOBA, and just overall very good numbers. So Ketel Marte at 2,900, he is pretty much the best value play on the entire slate. I'm not really sure it's even close. I mean, there's a couple of other guys too, but I mean, when he's healthy, as he just recently returned, I mean, we saw I remember his price tag being close to 5K, so 2,900, you can sign me up. Then going down to third base, we have Rafael Devers at 5,400. Now, Dean Kremer, I believe that's how you say his name, he's not been bad in his first few starts, but the Red Sox do have a team total above 5 today, so I'm going to have some interest in some of the lefties here versus him. And Rafael Devers, he's been doing very well versus righties this season. Actually, sorry, I was looking at something else. But yeah, he's been doing fine versus righties this season like he was last year. A 620 slugging, a 287 batting average, striking out quite a bit, but over a 330 ISO. So I think Devers is a fine option if you're looking to stack up the Red Sox, and he's pretty much a necessity if you're stacking up the Red Sox. But I think he's fine as a one-off as well if you got extra money to spend up at third base. Bregman going up against a lefty. He's got great numbers versus lefties this season, as he always has, but only an 8% strikeout rate, a 367 batting average, over a 260 ISO, and just overall very strong numbers. So Bregman, he's fine for stacking up the Astros, or if you just want a cheap one-off, I mean, only 4,400 is a pretty good price tag for him. Then Alec Bohm, I wish his name was Alec Bohm. That'd be a lot more fun considering it's baseball. But Alec Bohm at 3,000 is okay for looking at his splits versus righties this season. Not as good versus lefties, but still, I mean, a 352 batting average I was just talking about in the power department. He's hitting for a higher batting average versus righties. The power, not as much, but still 378 WOBA, 134 WRC plus, and Eric Fedde is just a low strikeout pitcher. So I think at 3,000, Alec Bohm is a fine option. Going to be hitting to the top of the order, and I could see that making him decently chalky as well, just especially if everyone's spending up at pitching today. Then dropping down to shortstops, we have Didi Gregorius at 4,500. Again, I like the Philly stack here versus Eric Fedde, one of the better stacks on the slate. Team total above 5 here, and if you're looking at Didi's splits versus righties this season, he's hitting for a pretty high average with a 301 average and only a 7% strikeout rate. So I think he's fine. Gleyber Torres is fine if you're stacking up Yankees. He's always had some decent power versus left-handed pitching. Then Nick Ahmed, 3,800. He hit a triple last night, and I forget exactly. I don't think it was a bases clearing triple. It might have been. But still had a nice game last night. Facing a lefty here, he's going to be a fine option for the price. 245 batting average, two lefties this season, and a 184 ISO. Nothing great, but again, he's only 3,800. And then dropping down to the outfield where we have 40 good options here, so I do apologize for that, but there's just so many good options on this slate. But Juan Soto, 5,800, going up against Zach Eflin. Eflin is coming off a fantastic outing, but he's the guy that will struggle with left-handed bats. And your 500 WOBA to lefties this season and a 14% walk rate. And Soto is one of the best hitters in the league versus right-handed pitching. A near 400 batting average, 730 slugging, 211 WRC plus, a near 500 WOBA. So yeah, Juan Soto is a fine option here. And then Aaron Judge, 5,700 if you're just stacking up the Yankees. Judge this year's got over a 500 ISO to lefties. Again, limited sample size because he was hurt, but still, he's crushing lefties with a near 1,000 slugging. Just overall very good numbers. So if you got the money for him, I do like Aaron Judge. Bryce Harper going up against the low strikeout pitcher and Eric Fetty. I think he's fine. He's actually been better versus lefties this season compared to righties, but he's fine for Philly stacks. But Giancarlo Stanton at 4,700, probably one of my favorite plays on the entire slate because he's still just a bit too cheap here. Like he's $1,000 cheaper than Aaron Judge, which they should pretty much be the same price tag. So I imagine he's going to gain some ownership just from that. But looking at his numbers, it's a very limited sample size. But over the course of his career, we know Giancarlo Stanton's one of the best lefty masters in the league. But a 430 batting average, 300 WRC plus, 1,000 slugging, and a 571 ISO. Again, small sample size, but still he crushes left-handed pitching. George Springer going up against a lefty. He's been swinging a hot bat this season, but he's got a 333 ISO to lefties this year. Very low batting average, but a 556 slugging and a 129 WRC plus. So he's been doing very well versus them, and I think he's fine in Astro stacks or just as a one-off. Max Kepler, 4,200. He's okay here versus Casey Mice. He's kind of struggled in a few games this season. They have a team total of nearly 5, and look, Kepler's been fine versus righties this year. Once again, near 300 ISO versus righties at 391 WOBA, 149 WRC plus. The batting average is only at 264, and he is striking out 18% of the time. But I still think he's a fine option, especially for that price tag of only 4,200. Ian Happ, 4,000 against Trevor Williams as a lefty, and he does struggle versus left-handed bats. And looking at Ian Happ's numbers versus righties this season, they're actually very good. I mean, the past 2 seasons, he has been crushing righties. And near 400 ISO, a 435 WOBA, 670 slugging, and overall very strong numbers from Ian Happ. So I think he's fine in addition to Kyle Schwarber, which I'll talk about Verdugo in a second. But Kyle Schwarber is fine too. He's kind of like a similar play to Ian Happ. Just I feel like he's got a bit more power, although the numbers this season have indicated that Ian Happ's got the higher ISO versus righties this season. He's also overall been the better hitter, but I do like Kyle Schwarber's upside at 3,700, especially if you're just stacking up some lefties here. Versus Trevor Williams, you can go for a full Cub stack as well. I wouldn't leave out Baez. I know Kyle Schwarber got banged up the other night, but overall I think it's a pretty solid offense to target tonight. And Verdugo, just a lefty here versus Kremer. I know he's had a solid start so far this season, but if we can get Verdugo splits versus righties, he's got a 310 batting average this year. 560 slugging, 144 WRC plus, and overall very strong numbers. I think he is fine for stacking up some Red Sox. Then McCutchen, just there for Philly stacks. Looking at his numbers, he's been fine versus lefties this season versus righties. Struggling a bit, but still Andrew McCutchen at 3,500 on a team I like quite a bit today. He's going to be interesting. Tim LeCastro at 2,800. I imagine he's going to get the leadoff spot here versus a lefty. And if you're looking at his splits this season, not impressive, but again, leading off for a stack that I imagine is going to have a team total around 5 tonight, if not maybe a little bit more. So they're going to be one of the best value stacks on the entire slate. So at 2,800, he's fine. He's got plenty of speed. Then Jay Bruce, he's dirt cheap at 2,300. We know his power upside versus right-handed pitching with a 439 ISO versus them this season, a 702 slugging, a high fly ball rate, and overall very strong numbers. And I do like the Phillies. So at 2,300, definitely don't mind Jay Bruce. And that's going to be it for the video, guys. I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure you leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really do appreciate that. I'm sad to say that this season is almost over, and I won't be able to do any more videos for you guys for MLB, but hope you guys enjoyed the short season. I'm looking forward to the long actual full season next year. But yeah, anyway, hope your guys' lineups do very well, and I hope you guys enjoy your Wednesday.